to episode 3 of Lotus Chats. And we are here today with the 5 Lotus ladies themselves. We have Jazzy, we have Deanne, Laura, and Matilda.
Hello.
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 Hello, everyone.
And today we have a really great topic. We are continuing our discussion from last week on building connections through critical communication by talking about the music of acknowledgement.
Ooh.
So today that is what you're going to hear about. And we are going to start with a very interesting question on what does acknowledgement mean to each of us? And I'm going to start by saying I love this topic. I think this is great that we're talking about this today. And the way that I understand acknowledgement to me, or what it means, is I feel that acknowledgement is the key to building intimacy in our relationships, and it creates powerful interactions if we know how to utilize it. To feel seen and heard is what I ultimately think all of us as humans want. And it's the very essence of human experience, is the way that I see acknowledgement. I personally find it really special when somebody tells me that they acknowledge something I've said or done. And the important part for me would be right after they acknowledge that, and let's say it's something that I really want to go deeper into, having them ask me if, if they could help me in some way, or if, whatever it is that I need, that they're there for me. I have to tell you that when it comes to acknowledgement, one of the biggest things that I have found is when there is love there in the interaction, that is when it goes to such a deeper level. And I will say that my aunt growing up was such a key in me learning what beauty can come from being acknowledged. And I'm going to share this with everyone here. Growing up, it was I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions because my parents divorced when I was really young. And coming out of that and experiencing and asking why these things happened, I remember one instance where I was in my room and I was just crying because I was asking why things didn't work out and why certain things were happening as a result of the divorce. And I remember my aunt walking into the room and asking what was wrong. So that was the first thing she did. She just asked what was wrong. And I told her. And she listened and she asked me some great questions about, well, why do you feel that way? What is going through your mind right now? I want to hear it. And after we had our discussion, I remember she just gave me a hug and said how much she loved me. And bringing the conversation back to love, that is what I remember most growing up as a child, with those instances where I had, those questions of why. So the way I feel like what acknowledgement means to me, it's so important to physically, mentally, emotionally be there for somebody. Body language, eye contact, all of that is just so important in that moment. So I definitely want to just say that if we can all take that time to just really be in that moment with that person, to really look at them and give them that space, it could mean the world to somebody just by doing those simple things. So what do all the ladies think of? What is your experiences with acknowledgement?
I love that, how you said that acknowledgement to you is when you can also feel like love and connected. I also feel that with acknowledgement, it's about being seen and being heard. And just when you're fully present with that person, you can actually appreciate to a fuller extent of what that person brings or who they are and how they show up. And that's acknowledgement becomes more powerful when you can see a person for who their heart is, and or what their heart is feeling or what they're going through. So it could be praise, it could be an emotional feedback they were getting from a vibe. Acknowledgement goes very deep, and it's very powerful when we're able to connect in that way and deepen our relationships that way. And it allows for communication to flow through, and trust to be built.
One of the challenges with acknowledgement is we live in a society that's very busy. We're driven, we're very oriented to outcomes. And so as we're busy doing all the great things that we're doing, we lose the time to actually see someone or listen to someone or truly see them. And there's something in all of us that wants to be seen, acknowledged, to be loved. But if we're so busy, it's almost a shock when someone stops us and says, I see you, I acknowledge you, I hear you. And that's why I love the title of our talk today about the music of acknowledgement, because when you're busy and you're floating around and you're doing all these things and someone stops you to tell you that they see you, they hear you, they love you, it's a surprise, but it's also beautiful music.
That is so true, Laura, that you're saying how we get so busy. We get so busy in just our day-to-day lives. When I was a little girl, I used to experience frequent childhood sicknesses, and I was the youngest. So I was the one who was still at home when my older sisters were already in school. And my granddad, my maternal grandfather, worked the family farm. And he would be out there from dusk, what they call it, from dusk until dawn. He just around the clock, it seemed like he was working. But it's amazing that if I didn't feel well, he was the one I wanted with me. Mm-hmm. He would shut the farm down for that day, put on his Sunday best, as he would call it, because he was coming to town. We lived in the city limits. They lived out in the country area, in the county. And he would put on his best digs and come to my home and sit with me all day. And I can remember sitting in his lap and falling to sleep. That was nap time. And we would read together and we would sit and sing songs. And that would be the whole day. That was his acknowledging me. It was acknowledging that I needed him and that he was the one that I chose and I loved him. A lot of times we look to verbally say something in acknowledgement, but sometimes it's like you said, we just need to slow down and take time out for someone, especially someone in need, but whether they're in need or not, just to let them know about our actions, how important they are to us. And I thank you. I acknowledge you for what you just said and how that triggered such beautiful childhood memories for me.
That is so beautiful, Matilda. I love your childhood story. And for me, acknowledgement means both sides. First, it starts with internal and then our external self. So I'll start with the hardest one, which is our acknowledging ourselves internally. And to me, that is hard because sometimes, or maybe growing up, we just are not in the practice of acknowledging ourselves first. But if we don't acknowledge ourselves first, then who is going to acknowledge us? Or rather, who are we constantly seeking to get acknowledgements from? So I think the first person that we need to acknowledge is ourselves, so our internal self, and then acknowledging our external environment. So like little things could be as simple as why acknowledgement as music to our ears is because when you acknowledge someone with their name, as simple as that, just calling someone with their name, that is beautiful music to the ears, right? And just even body language like nodding, Like, when you walk into a room and then you nod, or even by looking with intensity of your eye contact with the waiter who is, serving you, just acknowledging them. I think that is just music to the ears. And I think why acknowledgement is also music to the ears, because it not only speaks to the mind, but it really reaches to the heart, and most importantly, to the soul.
I have a question. What do you think? Why is it so difficult for many of us to acknowledge ourselves?
Mm.
Where do you think that comes from? Where and how do we break that vicious cycle of not exercising self-acknowledgement?
I feel like in childhood, we were taught what to do, but we weren't, it's not normalized to teach who to be. They say be yourself, but we're like, who is ourself? We're around everyone else. And I like mom, like dad, like Auntie Susie, like uncle, like grandma, it's who outside of me can I be like, instead of what about myself is amazing. Like that isn't necessarily like a normal societal teaching. It's how to acknowledge who we are. We're just told. So when we grow up, I feel like that's a conditioning that we learn to like, okay, well, I see myself for this. It's like not until later that's developed. So I feel like that's definitely a root, right?
I would think so. I think perhaps, do you think society teaches us self-acknowledgement arrogance?
Yeah.
Not appropriate. You don't want to think too highly of yourself. Stay humble.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is acknowledgement, I think wouldn't you ladies think that it takes humility to actually acknowledge yourself for your accomplishments, not in a boastful manner, but to just quietly say, hey, I did good today. I got this done today. I did good. I look good. I'm smart. I'm beautiful. Acknowledging who we are and looking in the mirror and taking time to just say good morning with your gorgeous self. Is that acknowledgement? And that's okay. It's okay to do that. But for some reason, it escapes us. It escapes us, especially as women. There's so much guilt that comes behind or comes along with just saying, hello, beautiful. I'm proud of you. You make me happy.
I love that, Matilda. So tomorrow morning when I wake up and I look at the mirror, I'm going to do my humble acknowledgement to myself.
Yes.
You humbly acknowledge yourself because you are spectacular, and it's okay for you to say that to yourself. Yes.
I will say, Matilda, what you just said, it took me a while to get to a point where I had like looking in the mirror and doing that. I most recently, I would say within the last couple of months, started doing that. But before then, I would just go to my day-to-day, I have to go to work. Let's just get the hair done, put on the clothes. Okay, do I look okay? Okay, now I can go. There was never a moment where I took to look at myself in the mirror and tell myself positive things. And now that I have, it's like a game changer. It's life-changing when you can do that.
Absolutely. I felt that. So I'm a newly single mom, right? And so getting ready, like who does that? Besides like going to school, like that was the only time I got ready. I was a hot mess every day of the year for the last few years. And so now it's like when I see myself and I don't have anyone around me and I work from home. So I'm like, I would look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, you know what? You look kind of good today. You look great. So it feels good to establish that relationship with my mirror, with the literal mirror, and like, okay, we can do this. We got this. We're about to take on the baby, the work, and the world. Let's go. So, and it's empowering. It's key for my self-empowerment to acknowledge who I am, where I'm going and what I'm doing and what I'm proud of. I love that. I think it's important that we all begin to, when we own our power, to acknowledge ourselves, because we are worth it, that we validate and we acknowledge that we're worth it, and great things and magic happens from there.
I think it's kind of a journey, though, to just wake up one day and say, I'm beautiful. If that hasn't been your way of being, that takes some practice. And what I mean by that is, I liked what Matilda said. Many of us haven't grown up where we're supposed to be bragging and talking about ourselves. We're supposed to give to others. We're supposed to acknowledge others. We're supposed to care for others, especially as women, if you have children or you have family. And so I think what the challenge is for us is to just stop and say, I'm worthy. I'm beautiful. I love myself. And when you can fill your own internal cup with acknowledgement and gratitude, it's so much easier to give it to others. But we really aren't taught that very often as kids. And so it's a journey to learn that and to be okay with it and to realize it's the gift to you.
Laura, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can relate. I'm glad that you said that, because, and there's something that also that you brought up that just triggered this, but I remember growing up and having, how as a kid, you might have family members who say, oh, you're beautiful. Oh, you're so cute. Oh, I love you and all this, but it's almost like, and I'm not sure if, others can relate to this, where you hear it, but it doesn't sink in.
Yeah.
It doesn't sink in. And it's not until like you go through that journey, as you mentioned, Laura, where then you're like, oh my God, this makes sense. I get it now. But it is a journey, and it's a journey worth taking. So even if you started off not believing it, once you get there, it is worth every bit of struggle that you've gone through to get there.
This is so true. I love this topic so much. Within my journey of self-acknowledgement was looking at myself through the eyes of Source, or God, or the Creator. That was one way that's really helped me, because I found it very easy to see the greatness in others. And I was bullied growing up, so tattered self-esteem, and then finding all the things that's actually cool about myself. It's like, well, looking at myself like God's child, his daughter, that has really transformed the way I acknowledge myself also.
That's awesome. I think it starts in childhood. Many of us don't get that acknowledgement from parents, like we were talking about. We don't hear that, and so we don't know how to express it to ourselves. And so as women, we have the opportunity to break that cycle, and we have the opportunity to say, hey, this is something that's good for me, it's something that's necessary. And Jen, you touched a little bit on your journey. What was it that happened that awakened you to realize how beautiful you are, and enabled you to look in the mirror and say it out loud? Because I think if others knew how to do that, or could gain some insight with that, it may help them too.
For me, it started, I spent a majority of my life looking for outward acknowledgement. I was looking for other people to affirm that I was beautiful. I wanted other people to tell me I did a great job, that I had all of these characteristics. But as you know, anytime you're looking outwardly for people to acknowledge you, sometimes that will happen, but it's not always going to happen. And then I found myself disappointed. I wasn't getting enough of it. And so I started my journey of just kind of looking inside myself, working with a coach, and realized that I needed to grow my love and my understanding of who Laura is. And by doing that, I was able to really look at myself and appreciate who I was, all the things that I had done, all the things that I am. But I love what Jazzy says, my way of being. And where did I want to grow in my way of being, the way that I feel, the way that I carry myself, the way that things affect me inside. And why do they affect me? And knowing that instead of shame, looking at myself as that was an opportunity for me to grow. So that was the journey I took. And it like Jen said, it wasn't easy. I had to say to myself affirmations that I just didn't quite get at first. But as I started growing in myself, I realized, there are so many wonderful things about me and I have so much to give. I want to give back to others, but I had that reservoir inside I was able to do that for myself, and then I could do for others.
Wow.
So how do you ladies feel when someone is not acknowledging?
For me, when someone is not acknowledging me, it's like when I'm trying to play a music on Spotify and then the music doesn't come because the Wi-Fi is not on. So it's like you're waiting for it, you're expecting it, but then they don't know that you're expecting it. And then you get, did I click play? Did I click pause? So it's like that feeling of wanting something but not getting it. So definitely disappointed.
Yeah.
Is there an expectation?
Say that again.
Do you feel like there might be would you call that having an underlying expectation?
Yes, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Is that wrong? Is that wrong? I guess maybe. Okay. Let's talk a little bit here. So let's say you're in the grocery store line and the person doesn't acknowledge your presence with the greeting. Is it wrong for me to have that expectation? Or are we talking about a different level of?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's.
I think we can do, go ahead, Zian, go ahead.
No, I think in that context, it's not wrong to have the expectation, but I think, in the spirit of we get what we give, then we can start by acknowledging them first, say, hey, good morning, and hopefully they'll reply the same.
Yeah, I think that. Sometimes it doesn't work, so Matilda goes a little deeper, so, I've had those experiences, and I don't know, maybe I'm looking for something else. Y'all help me out in that, because I've had experiences where I do greet with an expectation of acknowledgement. Acknowledgement being one of the definitions was to accept the existence of something. So that acknowledgement would be for them to exist, that I'm standing here in front of them. And sometimes you can speak and they don't say a word. So Matilda goes a little further and say, hey, baby, you having a bad day.
They are not outward focused. I'll tell you that much.
That's it.
Yeah, I know.
They are not. They're checked out. They're barely checking you out, girl.
Right.
Come back. I help them come back. You're having a bad day. I'm so sorry. Is everything okay? I go a little step further, which I think is one of the questions that we had coming up about how do you practice acknowledgement, or how do you get others when you desire acknowledgement? What do you do when you want to request it? So that could come later. I don't want to get ahead of what we're talking about. So having said that, with acknowledgement and your acceptance of the existence of something, let's go a little bit deeper with our conversation. And as an example, if you were making an acknowledgement statement to me, how would that come forth for someone who wants to acknowledge someone other than themselves by, looking in the mirror and saying these wonderful truths about themselves? How do you acknowledge someone else if you haven't ever practiced that before?
I would come from a space of love, and I want to start by acknowledging the good things and the great things that I see about you.
Go ahead, acknowledge the great things you see about me.
Okay, all right.
Do an example, just short, real short.
Oh, okay, short and sweet. I acknowledge that you are a bright, loving person with wisdom and vision. You stand for everyone. Yeah. Like I feel safe around you.
And that's music to my ears. That's a wonderful, beautiful example of acknowledgement. And it's possible for us to be able to create these spaces of acknowledgement in our everyday relationships. Where do we go from here, ladies? Don't you think it's possible?
I do. I think it's very important, but I think we need to go in with our heart set and our mindset that we may be the models. We may be the first person in our circle that is truly giving unconditional acknowledgement. And we need to be prepared that it may be stilted at first for the other person. They may not know what to do, but that music will settle and will become part of your relationship with them. But I think you need to give it time because it'll be surprising at first. So you might not get the result at first, but you can teach them.
So we should go in without an expectation. We should go in without an expectation of them responding favorably. Yes. You may just get a blank look. Like, what the hell are you doing? So, but that's okay.
Yes.
Something that was said earlier, I think in our previous conversation, was that validation comes from, is mental, but acknowledgement comes from the heart space. So we're not looking to go in and validate someone by, they may have accomplished something and you're validating that it was done. Acknowledgement comes from your heart. It's reaching out to that person and really moving past the mental space. Am I making sense? And digging a little bit deeper and singing that song to them, making that music. I'll know of an example. In speaking to the first time that I practiced acknowledgement with anyone was when I was engaged in a conversation with one of my sisters, and she and I had a kind of rough history. And I purposed in my heart in that conversation, I'm laying all of that history aside. I'm going to clear my heart and I'm going to acknowledge her for the greatness that I see in her. And the conversation, it started. And then I said, you know what? I just want to acknowledge the greatness I see in you. You are a wonderful mother. You're a supportive mate. And I started to acknowledge and say out loud the beautiful things that I had observed in her as an individual. And she started crying because it was totally unexpected. And it was music to her ears that I dug deep to where she was inwardly, and I spoke to that. And that's really what the heart of acknowledgement is all about. You go past the superficial and you dig deep and you speak from a very vulnerable place. And it's scary, but it's beautiful. Yeah.
And I love it, Matilda. And building from your points, I wanted to say that acknowledgement first comes from the power of intention. So like you said just now, when you were talking to your sister, your intention was very clear. You wanted to lay off all the histories and really just give your heart out. And I think when we start with that intention from a pure heart, and that acknowledgement will be music to the soul. Yeah.
It will be. How beautiful. Music to the soul. Music. I like definitions. Music, sounds combined in a way to produce beauty of form, harmony, an expression of emotion. That is truly what music of acknowledgement is.
That's beautiful.
It is. It's so beautiful when you actually lay yourself aside and become vulnerable, even in front of someone that you might have a little scratchy scratchies with, and just acknowledge them for the beauty that is there. Yeah.
So I
It's
have
like
a
the
question.
bridge to harmony. I love how you said have music and harmony. So I feel like that's to create harmony within your relationships, and acknowledgement really more aligned with appreciation. And how you said acknowledgement is coming from the heart. So the heart appreciates and sees the greatness, while validation is just neutral, where it just gratifies that it exists.
Yes. Ooh, that's good.
Sorry, Miss Laura, what were you saying?
That's fine. I actually like what you said better. I was going to ask a question. If we're lacking the music of acknowledgement in our life, where we feel that we're lacking it, how do we create it, or how do we ask for it?
I make my own music.
So how do we request for acknowledgement? Is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking. Yes. If you feel that if the music isn't loud or is maybe non-existent for you, how do you create it or request it?
You first have to make sure inwardly that you're not seeking validation.
Okay.
That's a good check. Yeah.
You don't want it to become confused.
Right.
You're not looking to be validated, which Jazzy, I think you said something about it being it's a recognition of someone's opinion or their feelings or their emotions or whatever. It's more mental. It's recognizing that it's there. It's like, well, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's good. It's deeper than that. So it's not validation. So how do you request it? How do you?
One of the things that I have been practicing with my child lately. So Zillian is getting more chatty nowadays, my 9-year-old. And one of the things that we do, or rather I do, is that I actually ask from her when I want her acknowledgement that I'm here, that I canceled my meetings just to be here on her birthday and pick her up from school. And I know I want that. And when she hops into the car, when I pick her up, she didn't give me the acknowledgement. I actually asked from her. I say, hey, just in case you didn't realize, I canceled my meeting, and make sure that I'm here on your birthday. And then she actually said, oh, Mama, thank you so much. And then when she said thank you, and I thought, hang on, but that's not acknowledgement. I was like, thank you is, you are appreciating something that I do for you. Yeah. So I actually said that I want to hear an acknowledgement. And then she actually asked me from a 9-year-old perspective, but Mama, what is acknowledgement? And then I said that I just want you to acknowledge the fact that I'm here and pick you up on your birthday, that I'm being a loving mother. And she repeated the exact same word. I acknowledge you for being a loving mother. And picking me up from school. Yeah. So I think when we request for acknowledgement, we first have to be vulnerable and actually be brave to ask for it.
Perhaps too, we maybe need to do like you did and set an example of what acknowledgements look like. Like, I have had a conversation recently with my spouse, and I've told him, I acknowledge how hard you work and how dedicated you are to the business and making sure that we're taken care of. And I appreciate that in you. And of course, he just looked at me like, she must have been shopping. I think that's what he was thinking. thinking, what did she go for now? I think sometimes when we're requesting acknowledgement, that maybe we need to be the example of what acknowledgement looks like, so that somewhere along the line, the law of reciprocity can work in our lives and it will start to come back to us. But we sow that seed expecting it to bear fruit. And that can be by being the example of what acknowledgement is.
Matilda, thank you for sharing that, because that is exactly what I've been realizing. I was a single mom and I raised my son from about the age of 12. He's now 25 and he's in college, but he's also a manager at Starbucks. So I'm really proud of him. But one of the things that I decided to do as a parent was to just completely acknowledge him a lot. I always wanted that more in my life. And so I thought, I'm going to do this more for him. Well, as a teenage boy, he didn't always appreciate it. He was the kid that wanted me to drop him off down the road so no one would see, because he didn't want anyone to know his mom. You know, like at 14, he's going to not have a mom. But anyway, you know how teenage boys can be. And so now I go into his store, not every day, but as often as I can, to see him. And I try to be respectful, but I always tell him as I'm leaving that I love him. And of course, his crew can hear that. And he and I have a good relationship. But what was interesting is the crew started calling me Logan's mom. And so when I go in there, hi, Logan's mom, and they'll put it on my drink, you know, your name, and they put Logan's mom. And he told them, go in and get me so that I can say hi when my mom comes for a drink. It might seem kind of silly, but for me, that's acknowledgement. It's acknowledgement that the years that you're not sure what you're going to, if you're ever going to have a teenage boy tell you he loves you. But when he becomes a man, he's been taught acknowledgement and he's been taught how important that is. And I think that for me, the greatest acknowledgement from him is for his crew to call me Logan's mom. But the second thing is to know that no matter who it is in your life, whether it's a friend, your neighbor, your parent, no matter who it is, when you invest in that relationship of hearing them, seeing them, and seeing their greatness. I love it when Jazzy says this, we see their greatness. When we see them in their greatness, they want that acknowledgement, and they will learn to give it back, and they will learn to give it back in the way that works for them. And that is, I'm sorry, I'm going to tear up as I'm talking about it, but that's what I learned about acknowledgement, is when you cultivate that garden with people that you love and care about, they will give back, because it is truly music. It's even music for a 25-year-old who likes different music than mom.
That's beautiful, Laura. I think
Acknowledgement will always be an oldie and goodie.
Yeah.
That's a classic. Timeless.
I like
Thank
that.
you. I know. Thank you.
Timeless, not an oldie, but a classic, timeless. I think
Yes.
you hit on something earlier when you talked about how we have opportunity to look at the commonalities that we share with individuals and speak into that whenever making acknowledgement. Because sometimes we relegate making acknowledgements or things like that to only people we know, when there are people all around us that need to have that voice, our voice, the music, that music sung in their ears. And so by looking for commonalities, that's one way to approach it. There are many ways, but Jen, you spoke to that earlier. Do you recall?
Yeah, definitely. If we can see ourselves in other people, regardless of our background or where we've come from, then we can practice that music of acknowledgement and create that harmony. Because then it's like, I see, like you can tell somebody, I see you in me, and vice versa. And that's when that harmony and that connection is built. And it's especially important too when it comes to children, you know, parent, child, I see you and me, because that is your child. Or even when you're, you know, a stepfather, stepmother, aunt, uncle, just saying, I see you and me. I mean, that's a powerful statement.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Beautiful. I think Jazzy mentioned something maybe in one of our conversations where you were talking about being in a restaurant and you could tell that the waitress was having a moment. She was having a hard time, very busy, and not in a very pleasant situation, but you took time to acknowledge her for her hard work because you could relate to what she was feeling and what she was experiencing at that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was she was very busy, and it was a full morning, especially Chinese New Year. It was a Chinese restaurant. I was having dim sum, and I noticed that a person that I was with, he was very abrasive, and because she was outward focused everywhere, taking an order. People were tapping on her shoulder. Someone's calling for her. And I'm like, okay. So I'm patient with it. And so many things are happening to her at once. And this person I'm sitting with, you know, maybe he was having a bad day, but he goes, man, she's acting like a fill in the blank. And I said, you know, if you just treat her like a human who's going through things, and just like when you say that about her, it only brings more of that energy out.
Right. Yes.
So when you treat her like you know, you can relate to her. I mean, for me, it's like, look at her as if she was myself, my mother, my sister, whoever I like love. Then I took over, and you know, and as I spoke to her and I acknowledged her and I thanked her, everything for her slowed down, and then she just grounded, and she was present, and then you could see finally like the curve of her mouth just like lift, like it landed, and it's like, I got you, sis. Like, don't worry, you're all good, and you are appreciated. So
that's so beautiful, and that goes right back to what Jenna was saying about finding a commonality, and also what Laura said at the very beginning about just slowing down and paying attention to what's going on around us. There's so many opportunities just to give someone the music of acknowledgement, and watching those smiles show up, watching that harmony and that movement and that joy come about because they can hear it. It's music to their ears. And I think thank you for sharing that. That was a really good example.
I also think it's empathy, though. You know, I think empathy is a great supporting factor in acknowledgement. Your ability to connect with one's feelings, or another's feelings outside of yourself.
Yes.
Or, you know.
I kind of want to add to what Jazzy said. Jazzy, I thank you for sharing that about you made a difference in that waitress's life. Mm-hmm. Most of us would ignore her or just kind of bury our head. And what you did was you acknowledged her. What if we did that more often? I don't know about where you live, but where I live, you just go to the grocery store or the gas station and someone's angry. I don't know why. They're just, you know, people are in a hurry. They want what they want now. And yet you slowed the whole restaurant down just by acknowledging her. And what if each of us did that more often? How might we change our circle?
That's really beautiful, Laura. So in closing, I think I want to encourage every one of you who's watching right now to do what Laura suggested, which is do an acknowledgement to someone around you right now, right after you watch this video. And it could be someone in the restaurant, it could be your family member, or even just pick up the phone. And by the way, acknowledgement, don't do it on WhatsApp, okay? Actually call the person and talk to the person. And this is another stretch for you. Do a video call instead of a WhatsApp call, a voice call. Yeah. So I want to encourage all of you there to, give out your acknowledgement from your heart and aiming directly to the person's heart so that that music will land in their soul. So my question for you is, how do you practice acknowledgement in your daily life? If you want to put that in the comment, we would love to know and share with each other, how then do you practice your acknowledgement in your daily life? And if you're listening this on Spotify, click follow. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the notifications bell and follow and subscribe on Lotus Chat Worldwide. Thank you so much. Signing off. And next week, we're going to come back with an exciting topic for you.